Kia ora, welcome to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod once again. It's quarter-final time. We've been waiting 15 weeks for this, but we're finally here. At the very start, we mentioned who our top 8 would be. We might have to revisit that a little bit along the way, Jipper, but look, a lot to come. The big game of the weekend coming up, probably the Hurricanes in Canberra. That's the real 50-50 match out of them. We'll have a look at that and how the Hurricanes win over the Crusaders left them in good stead to maybe go over there and pick up a win. We'll go through a few curly viewer questions today. You guys have sent in some interesting ones. And also Aaron Smith. He says goodbye to the Highlanders, obviously one of the all-time greats. We have a look at what he means to that club and what it looks like for that club in the future without him in their ranks. So, without further ado, James Parsons in the studio, psyched up that the Blues got a home playoff and it's ready to go.
Those are my 8 teams too.
Yep. I was
just the wrong order.
Wrong order,
but you know,
you knew.
Got the right 8.
But you left Joey's Highlanders out of that top 8, and probably awfully clever of him to do that, Joe Wheeler. Welcome to the podcast.
It really pisses me off, Jip, to hear that you didn't pick my Highlanders. You are certainly off the Christmas card list, I'll say. Bloody hell. You invite me on the show and I find out that the co-host hasn't picked my team. A ridiculous... Oh, I just can't believe it. Ross, can we hang up now or what?
Well, if you can stick around for another 45 minutes at least, we'd appreciate it. But feel free to come at him hard. Like, that's your prerogative.
Mate, yeah, no, look, those teams certainly deserve to be there, and the Highlanders don't. They weren't good enough, plain and simple this year. Good look in the mirror from those boys because, they just fell short on too many occasions in a couple of crucial games, especially in Australia that they needed to win. Couldn't deliver when the push came to shove. So, disappointing year. I'm sure they'll be sulking into their pints today as we speak.
There's a personification of Spates. I'm surprised he didn't mention the word.
I know.
At any stage. Good on you, mate.
I probably should, but I won't. I'm sure they're having a couple. I'm not sure what they're celebrating other than probably the departing lads, like you said at the top, Aaron Smith leaving, a couple of others, Marino Michele, Shannon Frizzell, a couple of really some Highlanders that have been around for a long time as well. So I'm sure they're enjoying each other's company for one last time. It wouldn't be tasting as good as what a Spates normally does, mate, that's for sure.
Does a Spates taste good? I don't know about that. I don't know. Call me a Jaffa. I'm not buying it.
You certainly are, mate. You certainly are. Not fruity enough for you. Not fruity enough.
Something a bit more hoppy for me. Before we get into the plight of the Highlanders, let's go positive, shall we? Aaron Smith. Quite an innings.
Yeah, I think it just shows the measure of him as a player, how much respect was shown at Eden Park. Like last game there, not getting an All Blacks test obviously later in the year. So he's had a massive impact on the game and I'm sure inspired a lot of future nines that maybe would have deemed themselves a little bit too small for rugby into the game and contributed a hell of a lot for now and into the future.
That's, I suppose, what he's done on the field, Joey. We don't necessarily see what he's contributed at the Highlanders off it. You've been there, you've won a title with him. What does Aaron Smith bring to a team away from the field?
The thing about Nug, he wears his harmless sleeve. We've seen that on the field, but he's exactly the same away from that. And sometimes that can be a little bit frustrating in those senior player environments because he's questioning everything. He's sometimes over-analysing certain things, but he's doing it for the betterment of the team. He's an ultra-competitive man, like most halfbacks are, but I think he is a guy that takes that to a whole other level. The way he prepares, it is no mistake or no fluke that he has played 185 games for this club, and of those 185 games, other than I think he probably had his worst season would have been 2013 alongside a lot of other All Blacks, but he has hardly ever put a foot wrong. He has always been one of the best players on the field, one of the most consistent players, and I mean not only for the Highlanders, but I mean in terms of that whole competition. For me, he'd arguably be one of the most influential rugby players that we've seen play Super Rugby. I know for the Highlanders how influential he's been on the field, but also off it. The way he prepares his body, ultimate professional. He's always in that gym before everyone, whether it's working on his passing. That's one thing that always staggered me about Aaron Smith, is when he was a young man, he always worked on his passing. That was going to be his point of difference, and that hasn't stopped to this day. He is still got the best pass in the world, and that's because he that's his part of his game that he's always going to be his point of difference. His speed and the speed of pass is what sets him apart, and that's why he's world class. And he's seen off some of the and kept at bay and kept that starting 9 jersey for the All Blacks for such a long time, and probably changed the game. Like, you think back to when he came into the All Blacks frame. Before that, Piriwepu, Jimmy Cowan, that sort of bigger framed halfback, maybe considered a fourth loose forward, were the guys that they went to. And then Aaron Smith in 2012 came on the scene, and man, did he set the world alight with his speed across the ground and his speed of pass. And that hasn't been matched for sometimes some of the guys that have been chasing him. You think TJ Perenara, Tawera Kurt Barlow, Andy Ellis, Brent Weber, Triple T, Finlay Christie. No one's been able to knock him off his perch. So, yeah, he's world class, and everything is due from preparation right through to performance. So, yeah, one of the best that I think we'll ever see throw the 9 jersey on, not only for the All Blacks, but definitely for the Highlanders.
When you've got that speed and width of pass, how does that affect the way that the opposition's got to take you on?
Oh, it just doesn't give them time to take you on, to be honest, because his pass can almost take out 5 or 6 defenders at once. You know, around that breakdown, you know, if they're too tight together, one of his bullet passes to a midfielder promoting themselves, just even if they don't make it through that D line or advantage line, they're still trapped, and those guys aren't going to get round quick enough for someone like him who can almost get it popped or keep it going. And time again, especially I suppose when Ben Smith was there, they just had this knack of doing exactly that, and it was purely his ability to get that speed of ball out of the breakdown. And of course, obviously, guys like Joey cleaning those rucks, so it's, you know, pinpoint for his service.
That's one thing I will say about Aaron Smith is when you put your hand up or your hand out and you wanted to pass, it was on a platter. Like, he very rarely, you were very rarely having to catch it up here or down at your ankles. It was in front of you. And for guys, we never had the biggest pack, but we were the quickest around the field and we played with speed, and that was always our point of difference. And he was the one that drove that. And if we weren't in position quick enough, we knew about it. That was one of Aaron's great strengths as well, as keeping guys accountable. But man, was it a pleasure to catch his passes? I'll tell you what, yeah, world class and always on the button.
One of the things about him that seems to stand out, and I don't know whether this is real or this is just my imagination, but I don't remember halfbacks having relationships with wingers the way that he had relationships with wingers. Like, when I think, Joey, of Aaron Smith and Wysake and Naholo, and how often, or Aaron Smith and Ben Smith, and how often he would be going directly to them. And I don't feel like you saw a lot of halfbacks doing that before him.
No, I think you're right. And I think it's the benefit of, like, Ben and Aaron playing so much rugby together for such a long time, is that they know they can read each other's body language when they're heading into things, or they just need to hear one little cue and they're picking up exactly what that other guy is saying. And those guys had a real knack throughout, probably from 2014 through into 2017. I think that's when the Highlanders played their most consistent and best rugby. And it was by no mistake that the Smiths and Wysake were a huge part of that. And you're right, but I think Jamie Joseph also made sure that the Fijian boys, Wysake and Paddy Osborne, were always bringing something to the party, as he used to call it. Get around the rucks and pick off some of those fatties like James Parsons.
Fatty's no longer, Joey.
I'm not sure if you've seen his Instagram. Yeah. I'm not sure if you've seen his Instagram, Joey, but there's not an ounce of fat.
Talk about that for a second.
Yeah, please do. It's
looking to become a male model or something like that? Like, are you reinventing yourself or what?
Oh, well, you know, you got to do what you got to do. You got to make money while the sun shines.
Yeah, real estate agent, male model, fitness. You got it all, mate.
Yeah, and my head's getting bigger as you speak.
Yeah. I would have had a field day with that back in the day. If you're in the team environment, that would have just been everywhere. Everywhere.
And there's no doubt it wouldn't have gone up in the team environment.
Did it get brought up when you went and named the Blues team today? Hopefully they introduced you as you with your shirt off running into it.
No, I don't know how you get greeted at the Highlanders, mate, but it was all pleasantries for me.
Hope you wore the headgear, mate, just for old time's sake.
Before we move on to what we're looking at for the quarterfinals to come, the Highlanders, we have had an email through from David Lawrence via email. He says, I'm a Highlanders supporter. This year we look dreadful. Next year, Aaron Smith will be gone. In the meantime, Drew are getting better and even the Force are showing signs. Is it possible that the Highlanders could finish bottom of the table next year? What do you think, Chip?
Of the whole?
Of the whole thing?
No, I don't think so. I mean, Joey's probably very well placed to comment on this in terms of the players coming through. But if you look at a guy like Sean Withy as an example, I reckon he's a player that has got a massive future. Billy Harmon, I don't know. Those sorts of players have been. It hasn't been an easy year with injuries for the Highlanders. It's not as straightforward as probably people think in terms of skill set. But I mean, you're always going to be in the contest if you've got that talent around the breakdown. We know they've got the ability when fit at set piece as well. Ethan de Groot, man, he's playing some of his best rugby, and as I like to say, it's one up front. There's some key men that can deliver that for them.
What's your take on it, Joey?
Oh, look, I can understand his frustrations, but I don't think that they'll finish bottom of the heap. I definitely think that the Highlanders are going to be rebuilding. I hate to use that phrase, but that's essentially what they need to do. And they've finally realised that they need to invest in developing their out of their own region, or sorry, not out of their own region, but recruiting earlier and developing those players in the region. They haven't done that in the past, but they've put some investment in that, started about 3 years ago, and they will soon see the fruits of that. If they can hold on to their young talent, then I think they're going to be in really good stead for the future, because they've got some really good young men coming through that program. I look at AJ Faliafana, who's going to hopefully make the New Zealand 20s this year. Cam Miller was part of the New Zealand 20s side last year, so two really good young 10s coming through the system. Finn Hurley, a good young 15 that will hopefully make the New Zealand 20s this year. He made the team last year. If they can keep those guys, because what's glaringly obvious is obviously Mitch Hunt had a disappointing season this year. They just haven't been able to, since Lima Sopuanga and Ben Smith, they haven't been able to find a consistent combination at that 9, 10, 15, the real spine and the drivers of that Highlanders side. And that's the glaringly obvious part that they're missing, I believe. The rest, if they can all stay fit and available, I think they'll be able to put together a reasonable 15.
Let's move on to the Hurricanes and the Crusaders, because...
God, that was a good game.
Oof, it was a goodie. The Hurricanes sounded a warning, really, before the playoffs. Down 19-3, they had to show the kind of guts that will get you a win in Canberra.
Yeah, I think, and give them the belief they can do it. I think you just need to look at the way Dane Coles played to show what it means, that jersey. And he was backed up by a number, but him in particular set the tone for them to make that comeback.
He loved it. I know it was his last game. I don't know how sentimental Coles he is, but he is passionate, that's for sure. And we saw it, Joey.
I had a chat to him off here, and he was like, there was no way I was losing to that Crusader team on my last game on Sky Stadium. And then he just played with his heart on his sleeve. He was absolutely at his niggliest best. And I actually think he was the catalyst. What he did, they were obviously got smacked on the nose early, and the Crusaders just kept coming through the front door, as they always do. That's where they go to. When they're in doubt, they go to their forwards, they'll muscle you up, and they were doing it brilliantly. Then Colesy said, nah, not on my turf. And in that second half, just was like, right, I'm going to get under these guys' skin, and he did a perfect job. So un-Crusader-like to throw them off their game like that, and especially a guy like Cody Taylor, who is normally unflappable. Real cool, calm customer, great leader. He was rattled. He got in the red. You could see the rest of them. They were all flying in from everywhere, all the Crusaders. But that lifted that crowd. They all got in behind him. 18,000. I've never seen, for every little bit of niggle that was going on, they were on their feet. Flags were going nuts. It was something to behold, and that lifted the rest of the team. So Colesy was just, it was like, I'm just going to do this because, whether it's the last hurrah or whatever, if I get sighted, I get sighted. I don't know. He was just at his absolute niggliest best and pushed it right to the limit. But yeah, some of those images, especially when Cody Taylor got Simba, but he's given it this it was far out. There was a hilarious moment in rugby history. I just thought, this is so good. Iconic. Like, that's iconic Colesy. It's so good.
You've had your time with Colesy.
Yeah, not quite like that. We always said a few things, but that was definitely another level, especially because they are great mates. But it definitely shows you when you cross that white line, there's no friends. I almost thought they subbed him a little early, but I think probably they were maybe worried that if he keeps going the way he's going, he might get yellow carded too. So they needed to get the young fella Devery on, who did a great job when he came on. But I just thought that he, the way he was even, I don't know if because you were down there, Joe, he was just storming that sideline. You couldn't always see it. It was almost on the field.
He was dialed right on. He was right on, into that assistant referees about things, and it was just so good to watch. I was basically following him the whole game. But I actually think one part of the game that they matched or actually bettered the Crusaders was at scrum time. I thought their scrum was exceptional, and obviously we know how good a scrummager Colesy is. I don't think he gets enough plaudits for that work he does in that area. But I think the Crusaders were a little bit rattled by that, because that's usually, as you know, it's their maul, it's their line out, their scrum, their maul that they go to when they want to either get a penalty out of a team or they want to basically frustrate teams into mistakes, and they just couldn't do that at scrum time. And I think Colesy, he was dictating terms which would frustrate the Crusaders. Let's put it that way. That they were allowed to do that.
I think the expectation would be that the Hurricanes should have, they're down so many props to Crusaders, and we've just spoken about the Highlanders and the injury toll. To get and I know I'm going off the Canes track here, but for the Crusaders to get second place, for the amount of injuries they've had up front, as we all know, it's one up front, is so impressive. And they were still in that game right to the end.
Just to go on to Colesy again, what is a good scrummaging hooker? How do you tell the difference?
A hooker normally runs the cutter at scrum time. They make a lot of the plans out in the middle. And I suppose it's just making that execution and manipulation of the opposite front row to get up your side. If you're in the corner, you always want to promote your flankers if you're on defence and attack, so it slows it down. And also, a lot of the time in those midfield scrums is keeping it square and steady. And a lot of the pressure a lot of tight heads like to get in on the hooker, so keeping tight heads out is a big factor. But it's almost like, it's kind of hard to explain. If you know what I mean. As Chrono always said, the best coaches are actually when you get 3-on-3 and players talking to players, because it is quite a unique, it's a feel. And you've got to have a good feel for, I suppose, where the pressure's coming from, what you need to adjust to get your outcome that you need. So
it's kind of like being a line-out caller. The hooker is going to the props before you pack and you go, hey, let's turn slightly left this time, or whatever it might be. A
little bit more straightforward than lineouts. Lineouts are quite, there's so much variation in lineouts. It is pretty straightforward at scrum time, but the hooker will normally run the cutter there in terms of what side you want up, if you want it square and steady, and they'll connect with the halfback in the first five, because sometimes you want to paint the opposite picture of what you're trying to do to catch the defence off as well.
And that's just experience, time in scrums.
Yeah, and prep during the week.
Yeah.
So you would review and preview the opposition, and you'd go in with a plan.
Now, 3 more weeks left in our tipping comp. Super Rugby tipping. Go there, check us out. You'll see across the bottom here where to go to check out that scoreboard. So 3 weeks to go. The winner, after 3 weeks, will come onto the show and we'll hear all of their hot takes. It should be a bit of fun. So
I think Bryn's missed a couple because he's really dropped in the ranks.
Yeah, I've done the same. I don't know, just keep on forgetting to do
I just got them wrong. I've got no excuse.
It actually has been harder through the second part of the season, getting some of these right. So rather than getting you to pick who's going to win this weekend? Because I think we know who you're going to pick. I'd like to see a margin. So Blues v Tars.
Like 13 plus margin, or do you want to guess
No,
actual margin?
No, an actual margin, yeah.
Blues by 22.
Blues by 22, that's a good win.
I agree. I'd go Blues by 25.
25, even bigger. That's music to your ears. Excellent. Joey, Chiefs v Reds, what's your margin there?
Chiefs by plenty. Oh, man. 30? Do I go there? Yeah. Bugger it. Chiefs by 30.
Chiefs by whatever the weather allows. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that'll be interesting, the weather, but yeah, I'm with Joey. There's just too many injuries in the Reds. I'll say 31.
Yes. Okay, Crusaders versus the Drua.
Crusaders by 20.
20?
Yep.
That's a good one. Joey?
I'll go slightly less. I want me to do a bit better than that, so I'll go 15. Crusaders by 15.
Okay, and right, the last one, Joey, Brumbies v Canes. This is the 50-50 one, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think the Canes are going to have a field day over there, so I'm going to go Canes by 14. 2 tries.
Oh, I was going to say that. I'm going Canes
by 2 tries.
by 15.
Right, so we're all New Zealand semi-finals.
Yep.
Good times, good times. Okay, well, tune in this weekend. It's going to be a few good games to enjoy, particularly that Brumbies-Canes game. Super Rugby's heating up, quarter-final time. Catch us again soon at Aotearoa Rugby Pod. James Parsons, thank you very, very much. And thank you very much, Joey Wheeler, for coming in from the Deep South. Appreciate your time, especially, with it being a tough conversation about your beloved team at the very start there.
Yeah, weren't there some daggers in there, mate? Far out.
Yeah, that's, our viewers are on the money.
They're even trying to X the Highlanders to go to the Bay of Plenty, the Steelers. Far out.
Yeah, they're so nasty you would have thought I made them up, but I can tell you, go onto YouTube, you'll see them there. I'm not lying to you. All righty, well, thank you very much for joining us once again on the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Send us an email, aotearoarugbypod@sky.co.nz. Comment on the YouTube channel. We'll endeavour to answer as many of your questions as we can. We can't always get to all of them, but thank you very much for tuning in once again to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Mā te wā.